Hi guys, this is Dr. Math speaking, ready for the next video. And this time we are gonna try to solve trig equations, trigonometric equations with sine, cosine, or tangent. Now, when we solve an equation, it doesn't matter if it's an easy one or it's a more difficult one. We have to remember what we're doing. So imagine I just write you x plus 5 equals 6, right? So when I write this equation and I want to solve it, what I'm trying to do always is solve for x, which means leave the x by itself, alone by itself. So right now the x is with the 5, right? So we don't know how much is x. In order to know how much is x, we have to have something like x equal, and on the other side we're gonna have the result, the answer. So to do that, what we do is just we do we subtract 5 both sides, and we have 6 minus 5, and that's 1, right? Easy. This is the same thing as if I ask you, where's the coronavirus here? There's few steps that we have to follow, right, before we find out where the coronavirus is. So in this particular case, right, I subtract, let's say, 5, and then maybe I have to multiply times 10, whatever it is. Okay, there's steps that I have to follow until I get to the coronavirus. Here we go. Here we have. So I oh my God, look at this. Well, my daughter did it. Okay, so this is the coronavirus, and I found it. So I need to follow these steps, and this might seem very easy, but if you give this to a 1.5-year-old, maybe he or she will have trouble, right, to know what to do, to unfold all this. So it just takes practice, right, to know what to do first. So that's what we're doing with equations. So now let's suppose I give you an equation, okay, a trig equation that it's this one here that we have in one of those practices, 5 cosine of x minus 1 equals 2. Okay, so let's try to solve this one. So it's 5 cosine x minus 1 equals 2. Okay, now we have to know what's the next step, and here what we're trying to do with these trig equations, we want to have something like this: cosine of x by itself equals something in this side. So cosine of x alone by itself. So what is annoying here? The cosine of x. What is with the cosine of x in the same side? We want to have this -1 in the other side, this 5 on the other side of the equation. So because this is multiplying and this is subtracting, what I have to do first here is to get rid of this subtracting one. Okay, how can I kill a subtracting one? Well, I can do both sides of the equation plus 1. So what I'm gonna do here is, and I'm gonna just write it here. I know that you usually, guys, you do it here, plus 1, but I just wanna write it here. So we start solving this, okay? This is gonna be the operation we're gonna do, plus 1. So if I have plus 1 in this side, this is gonna cancel, right? So what it's gonna be left is 5 cosine of x right? And then the equal sign, and on the other side, because this -1, it's it's gonna go to the other side as a +1, right? +1, +1. I'm gonna have +1, +2, which is 3. So that's what I have, right? Now last step is gonna be before I have the cosine of x by itself. And I read it here, so I don't want you guys to do it here because I want you to do this in your head without having to write it, okay? So I just want to keep this clean. So it's going to be dividing 5 both sides, right? So then I'm going to have cosine of x equals 3/5, right? That's what's going to happen. So this 5 here that was multiplying, it's going to go to the other side, dividing. Okay, dividing by 5 both sides. This is going to cancel out, and we're going to have 3/5. Now, when I have this, the next step, it's what we have to do here. That's the next step. We have to do the arc cosine. Now, usually we have been doing this in class like inverse of cosine, but recently I saw that this was the standard way to do it. So you might find this in a lot of books. So we want to do it as, let's say, standardized as possible. So this would be the way to do it. So how is this going to look after I take the arc cosine both sides? Well, the arc cosine and the cosine, they're going to cancel out, and I'm just going to have the arc cosine in this side, okay? So it looks like this cosine actually goes to the other side as arc cosine. So x equals arc cosine of 3/5, okay? Now, to do this, I need a calculator, okay? So I need to finish this with a calculator. I'm gonna take the calculator, and again, in these calculators, you're gonna find this arc cosine as inverse of cosine. Here, the blue one. I hope you see it, where the cosine is. You see this -1 at the top. That means the inverse of cosine, which is not cosine to the -1. It's a different thing. So we want to make sure we don't mix this concept. It's not a power, actually. It's an inverse, okay? So now I have to do the calculator work, and I'm going to do second cosine, and then 3/5. Now, this is in degrees, okay? So in degrees, I get 53, okay? So if I would be solving this using degrees, I would have 2 answers, okay? One of them would be 53 degrees, 0.13, right? Can put the degrees at the end. And then actually, because actually, if we look at the symmetry of the cosine, okay, here in the unit circle, if we look at it, we can see actually that for the cosine, which would be the first, this would be the cosine, this would be the cosine, this would be the cosine, this would be the cosine of 60, this would be the cosine of 45, this would be the cosine of 30, right? Now, if we look at the negative values, so as this would be positive 30 degrees, while this would be negative 30, okay? Well, if we look at the cosine of positive 30 and negative 30, it's actually the same. It's the same value. The cosine of positive 30 and the cosine of negative 30, it's the same. They're equal. What about if we look positive 45, and negative 45? We also see that the cosines are the same. So there is a symmetry here. So what we're gonna say is that for the cosine, we actually have, besides the positive, the same angle but negative is gonna give us the same cosine. So because of that, we're gonna have two answers. One is 53, and the other one it's negative 53.13. Okay? Now, are we done? Are these all the solutions? No, these are not all the solutions, because actually, if every time we're gonna have a full round, so we have 30 degrees, right? Every time we're gonna have a 360, let's say it in another way. Every time we do a full round, so when we are 360, we're gonna have the same, actually, a coterminal angle, okay, that it will give us the same cosine. So every time we add 360 or we subtract 360, we're gonna have exactly the same answer for the cosine. So the way we're gonna write this is that actually it's gonna be 53 degrees, 0.13 degrees plus 360 times n, and negative 53 degrees, 0.13, plus 360 times n, where n can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 0, or it can be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So n, it just can be any integer number. So the way we write this is n belongs to the integers. Okay? So all this are the solutions for this equation. Okay? I'm sorry, I should have cut this. Now you see it, right? So again, 53 plus 360 times n, where n belongs to the integers. These are all the solutions. So we have infinite solutions for this problem. So in the next video, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to use radians instead.